Welcome to Adam's Athenaeum. Let's take a look together through the news and records of our times as we try to shed light upon the unvarnished truth. Thanks for coming back to listen to this episode where we're going to talk about the Russia and Ukraine conflict. Where should we start today? Well, let's go ahead and pull up an article here from Yahoo News where Vladimir Zelensky just yesterday requested an accelerated acceptance into NATO. Let's go ahead and check out this video from Yahoo News together real quick and discuss it.
Її. Ми робимо свій визначальний крок, підписуючи заявку України на вступ у пришвидшеному порядку в НАТО.
Alrighty, there it is. President Zelensky making the formal request to join NATO. Now, what does this mean? It's basically Ukraine is asking to join the NATO ally forces, which would then mean for all allied forces in the Union, including us, the United States, it would mean that we are essentially now obliged to join and send boots on the ground to this war in Ukraine and fight Russia, along with every other NATO ally. This is why NATO has, so far at least, it seems, refused Ukraine's acceptance. Obviously, the Ukrainians have done a pretty darn good job at fighting back the Russians, and the war's continued longer than anyone thought it was going to. Ukraine has held on to more of its territory than anyone thought it was going to, and Russia now has had to resort to some pretty intimidating threats, we'll say. But why have they had to resort to these threats? Well, let's check out another article here. Let me pull this up. That way we can also look at the same article together. All right, here we go. This is from, I just essentially pulled it off of Google or DuckDuckGo on my browser. But it's Biden talking about Nord Stream 2, the pipeline. Now, this was uploaded February 7th of earlier this year, but it's got some pretty drastic implications, and a lot of people are talking about it on social media. And Biden, by the way, is not the only one who's talked like this or made mentions of this. Many other current politicians and leaders have. So let's hear what they have to say.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to that.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Possibly this is a...
Very interesting. Very interesting that Biden has asked what will happen, essentially, if Russia gains more territory in Ukraine. He essentially says, well, we're going to sabotage the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And the reporter asks a good follow-up question and says, well, how can you do that if it's under Germany's control? And Biden just says, I promise you, it will happen. Well, that doesn't look great when Ukraine, Russia, and America are all essentially blaming different people as to who sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. Well, what else can we find? Well, while I was perusing the internet, I found another article from Daily Mail talking about how Putin feels about what's happening currently. Let's pull this one up together. It says this is by Chris Pleasance. This was from earlier this year as well, April 2022. So we're going back in time a little bit to get an idea of how Putin felt, 6-8 months ago. And then we'll pull a more recent article up to see how he's feeling now. The article title says, Putin suggests he will use nukes against anyone who interferes in Ukraine. saying, "We have tools no one else can boast of. We don't want to brag about them. We will use them." Kind of sounds like Trump there. And then I'm just going to read some of their highlights here. It says, Putin said Russia will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons if threatened by countries interfering in Ukraine. He said response will be lightning fast and that Russia already has all the weapons that we need for this. Putin spoke days after Russia tested its new Sarmat-2 nuclear missile, which he claimed can beat all defenses. And the Kremlin has increasingly threatened to press the nuclear button as war in Ukraine has turned against Russia. So again, this article was from April of this year. Can we find anything more recent on how the Kremlin is currently feeling? Well, let's go ahead and pull up this other article from, I believe it was Yahoo News, where they say Putin certainly not bluffing and will use nuclear weapons if pushed, says Medvedev. Russia has the right to, and in this article they write, Russia has the right to defend itself if pushed, and the threat of nuclear weapons is certainly not a bluff, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has said. Vladimir Putin warned last week that he would use all the means at our disposal to protect Russia. It's not a bluff, he said. That Russia would also use its weapons of mass destruction if territory was threatened. Okay. So what does this mean for America? Well, we've been supporting the war in Ukraine, and we've been supporting Ukraine against Russia. We've obviously taken a side. There's no two ways around it. Our tax dollars have gone to support the war effort in Ukraine. Have we sent boots on the ground? No. But we've sent hundreds of thousands of ammunition, rockets, anti-tank missiles, mines, tons of gear, tons of weapons, tons of ammo, and drones. Everything short of boots on the ground. Now, if NATO accepts Ukraine's request to join the full NATO membership, that means everyone is going to war against Russia. Not everyone, but every one of the allies in NATO is going to war against Russia. What do you think Russia will do at that point? At that point, Putin probably will feel that he has no other option at that point other than to nuke everyone that went against him, instead of maybe just using what's called tactical missiles or tactical nukes against Ukraine. Now, what does tactical nukes mean? Tactical nukes essentially, we're talking about how much nuclear material is inside the bomb itself, but we're also talking about at what altitude it's dropped from, or what altitude the bomb detonates at. Depending if you detonate it at 1,000 meters in the air, 500 feet above the ground, or detonated on impact of the ground, it's going to have completely different consequences after it explodes and for the surrounding areas. So tactical nukes essentially means a smaller form of nuclear war than what we imagine. It probably wouldn't be Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but it would be small concentrated doses, probably around the front lines. But like we found with Chernobyl, who knows where the winds are going to take this radiated wind? This is dangerous times. Everyone in their right minds should be calling for peace and dialogue. And Putin was open to this until just yesterday when Vladimir Zelensky announced and televised the signing of requesting expedited NATO membership. Putin has warned for years that essentially he wants NATO to stay the hell away from Russia. And he wants NATO allies not to be right on the doorstep of Russia. That's been a pretty clear red line for Russia for a long time. And president after president after president of the United States has crossed that line. That's our fault. It's not just Joe Biden's fault. It's Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush. Every president in the last decade and a half has led to this problem. And now, look where we're at. We're on the brink of World War III. Do you know what that means? Do you really want that in an age of pure nuclear capabilities? Do you really want that? Do you understand what that means? to take radiation pills to protect your thyroid, to have to live underground because anywhere above ground isn't going to be safe from nuclear radiation or the wind or the contaminated water. How are you going to survive? If the water's contaminated, how are you going to survive? How are you going to eat? The local food populace will be contaminated. This is just the very tip of the iceberg when we're talking about world war. You don't understand the consequences of what you're asking or hoping for or allowing to happen. We need this to stop. We need some kind of peaceful resolution and acceptance of where these territories' borders lie, and we should accept local, what am I trying to say? Local votes, local races. You know, if they have elections, we should respect that. We shouldn't, as the United States officials, we should not be boasting our opinions on what we think happened in a Russian election. Do we have proof? Do we have evidence? If we do, share it with us, please. I would love to look at it. But I don't see the evidence, so I'm not going to trust the government. You've lied to me every single day for at least the last 2 years. What does this mean? It means we as citizens need to pay attention to what's going on, and we need to do what we can, apparently on social media to some degree, because there's a lot of propaganda going on social media. That's part of the reason I haven't particularly covered the Russia-Ukraine topic, is because it's so hard to tell what is actually true, accurate reporting, on the ground reporting, and what might just be deep fake video propaganda. But this was clear. Zelensky basically crossed one of Putin's red lines when Putin was ready to have some peace talks. That was a bad idea. I get it. I'm an American. I don't know everything that's happening over there. I shouldn't have an opinion or tell Ukraine what they should or shouldn't do. I get it. I support Ukraine. They were seemingly attacked unjustly, and they have every right to defend themselves. But they are not a NATO ally. And I don't agree when we're on the brink of collapse here in America. I don't agree with sending hundreds of billions of dollars to a country that we are not going to send boots on the ground for. If we're not going to commit ourselves to this war, we shouldn't spend more than $100 million. I mean, if you've watched my videos on the current debt clock, we shouldn't be spending any money at all on anything. We're $30 trillion in debt. But if we're going to spend money, maybe $100 million, not hundreds of billions of dollars. Again, for a country that very may well lose this war, that we refuse to put boots on the grounds for, and that NATO probably refuses to accept into their membership because not everyone wants to join this world war and get potentially nuked by Russia. We need to take a deep breath. Ukrainians need to take a deep breath, and Russia needs to take a deep breath and chill. Find dialogue. Find the time for dialogue. And if you can't find the time, make the time. We're all here for years, decades. Not everyone. We all have our time limits. But there is time to talk. There is plenty of time to talk before the button is pushed. Once the buttons are pushed, any chances of any peaceful talks being effective are gone. They're out the window. And who knows how many people will die and suffer for decades to come because of the consequences of not talking, of not finding a peaceful resolution, of not recognizing we are all human. We are all imperfect, and we all have our opinions, and we have to find a way to live together. And that's where I'll leave this episode. Find peace in your heart and spread it, and bring peace upon the world, unto others. Bring a smile to someone's face. And even if you're a soldier fighting in the war. I mean, I saw a video today of a Ukrainian family driving by a Ukrainian tank, handing them a box of Snickers, and it put a smile on the soldiers' faces. Do something to make someone else smile. It will reward you in return. Now, I'd like everyone to know that I just signed up on Rumble. It's another platform, kind of like a streaming, live recording platform similar to YouTube, where you can have followers, you have the comments section, they have a Rumble section, which I'm still trying to figure out, but essentially it's kind of works kind of like dislikes and liking on videos. But you can come check me out. I'm going to try to put a link under this video. That way you it should take you right to my channel, and you can check out my videos there as well as on YouTube. And again, if you think my message needs to be shared, please share this video anywhere, any of your social media sites, or just send it in text to someone and they can check it out themselves on their own time. And of course, if you have anything to disprove me, I look forward to talking about it in the comment sections. And I appreciate you coming back for this video. I'll hopefully be uploading something else tomorrow. I will see you then.